The wealthy person who tells you how they did it is not lying. They are describing something real. They are just describing the wrong thing. What they are describing is the strategy they used. What actually produced the outcome was a combination of that strategy and a set of conditions they did not control, and in many cases, were not even aware of at the time. The part they are not describing is the part you need most. You have listened to someone explain how they built what they built. The explanation was coherent. It had steps, it had principles. You took notes, or you remembered the key points, and you applied them, or you planned to. And the results were not the same. Not because you applied the method incorrectly. Not because you lacked the discipline or the intelligence. But because the explanation was built from one outcome in one set of conditions at one point in time, and you were applying it in different conditions at a different time with a different starting position. The person giving the explanation had no way of knowing which parts of their outcome came from their method and which parts came from being in the right place, in the right market, at the right moment, with a specific piece of fortune that did not repeat. And they did not lie to you. They genuinely believed the explanation they gave. The brain does not have a reliable mechanism for distinguishing between skill and luck in its own performance. It assigns the successful outcome to the decisions that preceded it, and then it teaches those decisions to you with full confidence. The concept is survivorship bias. It means we learn only from the visible successes and draw no lessons from the invisible failures. The person who built wealth is visible. The person who ran the identical strategy and did not build wealth is not giving interviews, not writing about their method, and not being studied. They are simply absent from the data you are looking at. An analogy. You walk into a casino and ask the person at the jackpot machine how they did it. They tell you which machine they chose and how long they played before winning. You follow their instructions exactly. You do not win. The instructions were accurate. The instructions were also useless. The outcome was not produced by the instructions. Financial success operates on the same logic in a domain complex enough to make the luck invisible. In October 1987, Elaine Garzarelli is a quantitative analyst at Shearson Lehman Brothers in New York. Her analytical model tracks 13 market indicators covering monetary, valuation, and sentiment data. In the week before October 19, 1987, her model generates a signal she has not seen before. She calls a market crash publicly. On October 19, 1987, the Dow Jones Industrial Average falls 22.6% in a single day. It is the largest single-day percentage decline in the history of the Dow to that point. Garzarelli is the analyst who called it. Her name appears on the covers of financial magazines. She is profiled as the person who had seen what nobody else could see. Shearson Lehman launches the Garzarelli Capital Management Fund on the strength of her reputation and her model. Investors pour money in. The model that had predicted Black Monday was now managing their assets. Over the following 7 years, the fund underperforms the broader market in most periods. In October 1996, Garzarelli predicts another imminent crash. The market rises over the following months. The fund is closed. Assets at closure are a fraction of what similar index exposure would have returned across the same period. The financial press spends considerable time afterwards discussing what went wrong with the model. The more accurate question is whether the 1987 call was evidence of a repeatable skill or a single correct prediction in a career long enough to produce one. Garzarelli's model was real. Her analysis was serious. The mechanism that made her famous and then made her investors poor was that one correct prediction in a complex system is not distinguishable from luck by the people who experienced it or by the people who studied it afterwards. The investors who gave her their assets were not foolish. They were following the only information available to them, which was the visible outcome of a prediction that had worked. The population of analysts who made similar calls that did not work were not available to study. They were simply not on the covers of magazines. The same pattern runs through every domain where outcomes are noisy and success is loud. A fund manager posts 3 good years and becomes a case study. The fund managers who posted 3 bad years and closed are not case studies. A A startup founder builds a company on a set of decisions and then teaches those decisions at conferences. The founders who made the same decisions in adjacent markets and did not survive are not at conferences. In the early 1900s, Samuel Langley, the secretary of the Smithsonian Institution, was funded by the US government with $50,000 to develop a working aircraft. His aerodrome failed twice and was abandoned in 1903. 9 days later, the Wright brothers flew at Kitty Hawk using a design they had built for under $1,000. The engineers and press who had studied Langley's approach because he was the visible, funded, credentialed attempt had built their expectations around the one person whose work was observable. The people who had already failed at aircraft design were not observable. The population of failed attempts was invisible. You are currently holding beliefs about how wealth gets built that came from the visible population. Your understanding of what creates financial success, the industries to work in, the investment approaches that generate returns, the career paths that lead to the outcomes you want, was assembled from the people and cases you could see, the successful fund, the correct prediction that was written about, the wealthy person whose explanation you heard. You are not holding beliefs that came from the full population of people who tried those things. You are holding beliefs that came from the ones who survived and became visible. And those two populations have very different success rates. The principle is this: before copying a strategy from a visible success, ask what the failure rate was across all the people who ran that same strategy, not just the rate among the ones you can currently see. This does not mean that skill does not exist. Skill exists. The problem is that in noisy domains, the gap between the outcome a skilled person produces and the outcome a lucky person produces is not visible from a single result or even from a short track record. The only way to get close to measuring actual skill is to look at the full distribution of people running a given approach and see what proportion of them succeed. Most financial advice is not built from that distribution. It is built from the subset of outcomes that were good enough to survive and become visible. What you give up is the comfort of a clean explanation from someone who got where you want to go. Clean explanations from visible successes are available everywhere. They are also built from incomplete data. What you get is a different question to ask. Not how did this specific person do it, but what was the success rate among all the people who tried this approach in comparable conditions? That question is harder to answer. It is also the one that gives you accurate information. The wealthy person explaining their method to you is not your problem. Your problem is that you are listening to one data point from a filtered sample and calling it a lesson. It was one outcome, in one set of conditions, from a population whose failures you never saw. You do not know what produced it. Neither do they. Next video. The career advice you received from the people who made it in your field was built from the same filtered sample. The path they took worked for them in the conditions that existed when they took it. The conditions that exist now are different. The advice is the same. And most people never notice the gap between when the advice was true and when they are applying it. The map is from a different territory.